A 49-year-old substitute teacher from a small town outside Fort Worth was dozing in seat 27 degrees Celsius, her knitting needles still in her lap, when the captain's voice cut through the cabin speakers with a tremor no passenger was meant to hear. The Boeing 777, Flight 4 and 17 from Dallas to Heathrow, was 800 miles from the nearest suitable diversion field over the North Atlantic. Both pilots were no longer able to fly the plane, and the only soul on board who understood what that really meant had buried that part of her life 15 years ago. What happened in the next 23 minutes changed how everyone on that flight would look at ordinary courage forever. Before we go any further, drop a comment below. What state are you watching from? I read every single one. And if this is the kind of story you came here for, subscribe. There are more coming. Sarah Klein looked exactly like what she was now. A quiet woman with silver threading through her dark hair, sensible shoes, and the patient eyes of someone who had spent years corralling third graders. She adjusted her reading glasses and glanced out the window at the endless gray below. Most passengers saw her and saw nothing remarkable. The flight attendant who brought her ginger ale earlier had smiled the way people smile at harmless civilians, kind, slightly distant. "You doing okay back here, ma'am? Long flight, huh?" Sarah had just nodded, thanked her, and gone back to her half-finished scarf. Nobody needed to know the real weight she carried. In the quiet of her mind, though, the old voice was always there. "Keep your scan going. Trust the instruments, not your gut when it's screaming." She pushed the memory down, the way she had for years. Her fingers traced the small, worn Air Force Challenge coin in her jacket pocket, the anchoring object she never left home without. It was a reminder of nights she'd rather forget, of medevac flights where the difference between alive and not came down to seconds and steady hands. She slipped it back in, closed her eyes, and tried to believe the woman who once flew C-130s through triple a fire no longer existed. The cabin lights hummed softly. Everything felt normal. But that knowledge had come from somewhere. Sarah's mind drifted to the dusty flight line at Ramstein years earlier. Her mentor, Colonel Marcus Hale, a man who had lost his own daughter in a training accident, had taken the young captain under his wing. He taught her things the manuals never covered. Not just procedures, but the feel of an aircraft when systems started to lie to you. She remembered the cold metal of the simulator seat, the way sweat would bead under her helmet even in the mock cockpit. "When will I ever need to know this?" she'd asked him once, after a brutal session on manual reversion and electrical failures at altitude. Marcus had looked at her with those tired, knowing eyes. "Kid, the day you think you'll never need it is the day it saves more lives than you can count. The sky doesn't care about your plans." That prophetic line had stayed with her. She'd laughed it off back then. Most people never learn that the autopilot on a heavy jet can mask cascading failures until it's too late, a surprising fact that keeps aviation professionals up at night. Redundancies are deep, but when weather, fatigue, and bad luck line up, the plane starts talking in a language only certain people still understand. Back in the present, the first wrong note came so softly most passengers missed it. The engine sounded off. A subtle harmonic shift. Sarah's eyes opened. She sat up straighter, listening. The seatbelt sign blinked on. A flight attendant hurried past with a forced smile. In the cockpit, unknown to her yet, the captain had slumped forward, victim of a sudden cerebral event. The young first officer, barely 1,200 hours in type, was trying to handle the radios, the autopilot, and the medical emergency all at once. "Stay with me here, because what happens in the next few minutes is the part nobody talks about. And once you hear it, you won't be able to forget it." Sarah unbuckled. She stood. The aisle felt narrower than it should. Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her hands were steady, the old muscle memory kicking in whether she wanted it or not. "I want you to think about what you would have done in her position. Hold on to that thought." The first officer's voice came over the speakers, strained. "Folks, we have a medical situation up front. We're diverting. Please remain seated." Panic flickered through the cabin like static. A businessman in 12A gripped his armrests. A young mother in row 15 whispered to her toddler, voice cracking. Sarah walked forward, the coin heavy in her pocket. She reached the forward galley and spoke clearly but quietly to the senior flight attendant. "I need to get into the cockpit. I can help." The attendant's eyes widened. "Ma'am, I can't." "I flew C-130s for the Air Force. Medevac. Heavy weather, degraded systems. I know what I'm doing." Her voice didn't shake. Disbelief hid in layers. First the gentle dismissal, "That's wonderful, but we have procedures." Then firmer refusal as the first officer, pale and sweating, cracked the door. "We're declaring an emergency, ATC is on it," but standard procedure was already failing. The autopilot was hunting, altitude fluctuating. Communications with Shanwick Oceanic were breaking up in the weather. Sarah named a specific checklist the first officer had skipped, the one for suspected pilot incapacitation combined with electrical bus issues. She reached past him, flipped a switch with practiced confidence, and the master caution dimmed. The first officer stared. "How did you—" He made the call. "Trust one over protocol." Sarah moved into the captain's seat. The anchoring coin came out of her pocket. She set it on the glare shield where it caught the instrument glow. It meant something different now. Not just survival, but responsibility for 289 souls who had no idea how close they were to the sea. She took the controls. The yoke felt alive in her hands, the same vibration she remembered from turbulent nights over Kandahar. The instruments painted a grim picture, heading deviation, partial hydraulic loss from the captain's collapse knocking systems offline, and building ice on the wings from the unexpected storm cell. "We're going to hand-fly this," she told the first officer, her voice calm. "You handle comms and the QRH. I've got the airplane." Every step was deliberate. She cross-checked the PFD, adjusted thrust manually because the auto-throttles were glitching. The first officer's voice steadied as he watched her. The skeptic in the jump seat, a dead-heading captain, went silent, then started feeding her wind data. Then the crisis within the crisis, a sudden compressor stall in the left engine. The aircraft yawed hard. Alarms blared. Passengers screamed. Sarah's hands moved before her mind caught up. Reducing power, rudder input, remembering Marcus's words in the simulator. "When it lies, you talk back with what you know in your bones." She cleared the stall with a technique most civilian pilots never practice. It worked. Barely. In the middle of it, an unexpected tenderness. The first officer, voice breaking for a second, reached over and squeezed her shoulder. "Thank you," he whispered. No grand speech, just two terrified professionals choosing humanity in the machine. Sarah nodded once. The cabin behind them had gone deathly quiet, the kind of held-breath silence that carries more weight than noise. The final approach into Shannon was the slowest part. Every second stretched. Decision height approached in driving rain. Sarah's mind flashed to her daughter's face back home, the school play she was missing tonight. Doubt crashed over her like a wave. What if I'm wrong? What if this is the day the sky wins? Marcus's prophetic line returned, unbidden. "The sky doesn't care about your plans." She breathed, adjusted the glide path by feel as much as instruments. The wheels touched with a slight crab, imperfect but real. Thrust reversers roared. They were down. The silence afterward was profound. Sarah's hands shook on the yoke as she released it. Her legs felt like water. She had the strange urge to laugh and cry at the same time. The first officer spoke first. "You just saved us." The deadheading captain simply looked at her, a long grateful stare that said everything words couldn't. In the cabin, passengers wept openly. One older man in row 30 later told reporters he had been praying for his granddaughter's wedding he thought he'd never see. Official response was efficient, paramedics, ground crew, but the raw gratitude in their eyes lingered. Weeks later, Sarah stood on the same Ramstein flight line where it all began, now visiting as a civilian. Marcus was frailer, but his eyes were sharp. They sat on the same bench. The coin passed between them without words. "Did you ever stop being afraid?" she asked quietly. Marcus smiled faintly. "No, but I learned the fear doesn't get the final say. You didn't become that pilot again up there, Sarah. You never stopped being her. The moment just reminded you, if this story moved you, I have more where this came from. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And leave a comment below telling me which moment in this story stayed with you. I genuinely want to know, do you think the sky chooses who it tests? Or do we only discover who we always were when it finally does?